be set up such that the kind of salvation of society in the kind of Hebrew Bible sense of the word, just meaning holding the society together, depends on moral progress. And I argue that actually that's been the case again and again, and religions have played a role.
Exactly, that's where I was coming. So what role has religion played?
Well,
they have given the framework to find the moral purpose?
The religion of the Israelites apparently succeeded in uniting 12 tribes that had previously not been united. So, Christianity helped the Roman Empire cohere. Islam founded a multinational empire. Time and time again, religion has played a role in expanding the social system and bringing people who were previously not in the same tribe into the same tribe. I mean, the story of history at one level is the story of expanding social organization. I'm arguing that that expansion entails a kind of moral progress because people have to expand their moral circle and say, yeah, okay, those people they're part of us, they're one of us too.
Right.
Okay, different nation, but we're in the same empire. They're one of us too. And I'm saying that the world is at a point where we're all going to have to get better at saying that about everyone in the world, and just that traditionally religions have played a role in expanding this kind of moral imagination. And I try to show that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are all capable of playing that. They've done it before. They've adapted their doctrines.
And do they play it the same way? Not that they teach the same thing, but in a sense their impact is the same. The consequence of them being there, whether it is Islamic or Christian or Judaic.
Yeah. Well, I'd say what they have in common is this kind of pragmatism, that when they...
You can find what you want.
They will find what's necessary in their doctrine to hold the social system together. That's what they have in common. Now, there are differences of circumstance that give them different emphases. For example, in individual salvation, the idea that, you personally can go to heaven, and that's largely what the religion is about, is very big in Christianity and Islam, and much less so in Judaism. In Judaism, the term salvation in the Hebrew Bible is usually talking about the social system.
Do you think people would be different if they did not think that there was, for lack of a better word, merit in doing good?
I mean, it used to be thought in the 19th century, there were people who were like, well, I don't believe in God, but if we tell everybody, if we tell everybody there's no God, society will fall apart.
Right.
It's interesting that now, among these so-called new atheists, Christopher Hitchens, it's almost the opposite claim, which is that religion is the source of all evil, far from holding society together, which I think is false and is dangerously false, to think that all of our problems, all the problems in the Middle East derive from just religious fervor as opposed to actual problems on the ground that we can work out.
Right.
But it's interesting that it's just flipped. I think it's largely a post-9/11 thing. I think between radical Islam and kind of Christian fundamentalism in America, certain people who dislike both of those things, and there are things I find to dislike in both of them, I have to say, have kind of generalized and said that, well, religion in general is the source of the problem. And one point in my book is that no, religion has very often played a very constructive role, and it still can. The question you're asking is, will society fall apart without it, is a question we don't know the answer to yet.
Take a look at Christianity and Islam. If you look at Muhammad and you look at Jesus, what do they share? And how are they different?
I think more than people realize, because I argue in the book that the Jesus of the Gospels is misleading, and that the real Jesus was less about universal love. I think that doctrine comes much more from the Apostle Paul, and I think that Jesus was more an old-fashioned fire and brimstone...
Social activist?
The opposite. This is one common interpretation of him now, is the kind of left-wing revisionism that, well, the stuff that's true is all the stuff about, feeding the poor. And he may have been big on feeding the poor. Yeah. That's possible.
But he was, in essence, you were going to say?
I think he was an apocalyptic preacher, fire and brimstone. If you want, Judgment Day is coming. And, I mean, that part is clear in the Gospels. But I think that was much more the core of his message. And I think he was a Jewish apocalyptic preacher. He was talking to fellow Israelites. I don't think he was interested in spreading the gospel to the nations. I think he was a local apocalyptic preacher with some fiery rhetoric, and that's what Muhammad was in the days when he was a street preacher in Mecca. Now, unlike Jesus, Muhammad actually acquires power before he gets killed.
Right.
His movement, unlike Jesus's, actually succeeds in getting power before anyone kills him. So then you see a second Muhammad in Medina, who becomes a statesman and a warrior, and all of that part of the Quran stands in stark contrast with the Jesus, even the Jesus that I think really existed, just because Jesus remained a street preacher.
Of all the fire and brimstone preachers at the time, and to succeed and to follow, and all of the qualities that Muhammad had, why did those two succeed?
Jesus and Muhammad?
Yes.
Well, they succeeded in different ways. I mean, Jesus himself, his followers, I'm sure when he was crucified, did not think they had succeeded. That was not their plan. I mean, messiahs were thought of as people who saved you in a conventional, the way a political leader would. The Messiah was going to save all of Israel as a leader, and so he didn't succeed by the expectations that probably prevailed during his life. Now, the memory of him became a religion that succeeded, I think, by changing a lot after his death. But I think that's more of a tribute to the Apostle Paul and to how fertile the Roman Empire was, how ready it was for a multinational religious movement. And I think Christianity was designed to be a successful multinational movement, designed largely by Paul. And I think that's where the doctrine of a love that crosses ethnic and national bounds comes in.
So without Paul...
I think it'll all be...
Wait, finish. If without Paul...
Well, it might be very different. There were different forms of Christianity, and some were more like Paul's than others. I think any Christianity that succeeded would have had to be pretty much like Paul's in the sense of emphasizing a brotherhood that crosses national bounds.
So Jesus would not have succeeded without
He would have
Paul.
had to adapt his message, but people are adaptable. I mean, Muhammad changed a lot in his career.
No, then why did Muhammad succeed? I mean, why is it today these two huge faiths
I think, first of all, both
stand
of them,
where they are because
both of them fell on fertile ground. You know, Muhammad...
There was a need for them where they existed.
Well, Muhammad was on the periphery of two empires, both of which were kind of in a state of decay.
Right.
And the movement, which actually spread largely after his death. I mean, he did acquire power and did start expanding, but it only became an empire after his death. Largely kind of took over the instruments of empire from those empires. But I think Muhammad himself got to where he got before he died by being a very crafty and pragmatic leader, much more pragmatic than people realize. They think of Muhammad, the stereotype is this, fervent religious guy. The stereotype on the right wing of America would be, religious wacko probably. But if you actually read the Quran, I think you see a very pragmatic person who's willing to amend doctrines as necessary to expand his coalition, to keep it going together. So, to keep it going. When he thinks that he can bring Christians and Jews on board, you see the Quran saying things like Jesus is the Spirit of God, Jesus is the Word of God, right out of the Bible. The Hebrews are the chosen people by God. All of this is in the Quran, and that comes at a time when Muhammad still thinks he can bring the Christians and Jews on board in a common faith or common political movement, depending on how you want to look at it. And then there's much less flattering stuff after the mission seems to have failed.
But Muhammad was more of a political leader than Jesus was.
Yes, he succeeded as a political leader in a way that Jesus didn't.
Right.
And
he was more of politics than Jesus.
And very adaptable, and I think in his religious doctrine in order to be a successful political leader.
Are we at a moment in religious evolution?
I think so.
And that moment is?
The moment is either religions take what they've always been good at, which is holding the social system together, and adapt to a time when the social system is the whole world, which will mean probably changing some of their doctrines and certainly moderating some of the more radical elements in them, or the whole system may fail. I mean, actual chaos. I think that's the moment that we're at, and there's simultaneously this challenge from science that compounds the problem, and is reducing the number of kind of well-educated people who are professing religion. So you have these two challenges happening at the same time.
The book is called The Evolution of God. Robert Wright, author of The Moral Animal and Non-Zero. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.